Hey everyone, Will Hanke here from Window Treatment Marketing Pros. We're here with another exciting episode of Marketing Pains. I'm very excited about today's guest. The big reason that I'm excited to talk to Elsa today is really because mindset is what we're going to talk about. And that's something that has drastically changed my business. I was in business for 20 years before I decided to give myself permission to succeed. And just the last 7 years have really, exploded for my own business. And it was purely because of mindset. So I know a lot of you are probably struggling with very similar things, self-sabotage, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to dig into some of that today with Elsa Johnson. Elsa, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. I'm so grateful to be here with you today.
Cool. Thank you. So let me read your quick bio here, and then we'll jump into some questions if that's all right. So Elsa Johnson is a mindset expert who successfully transitioned from the financial world to running a thriving high-end window covering business. Her experience in this industry has exposed her to the personal sacrifices and challenges of achieving success while maintaining well-being and happiness. Now she empowers others like you to find alignment and genuine happiness through her coaching practice, leveraging her extensive knowledge and skills. Elsa, I'm so excited to have you on today.
As I said, I'm so excited. I can talk about this all day, and with somebody as big as a witness as you, it's even more thrilling to me. And to share it with your listeners is just
Cool. Well, I'm excited. So let's jump in. Tell me a little bit about your background, what led you into kind of focus on the mindset coaching piece of it, especially for business owners.
Sure. From my name, and probably also people would recognize from my accent, I'm an import to the US. I'm born and raised in Denmark. When I came to the US, I worked for a lot of smaller entrepreneurial companies, 1, 2, up till 35 employees. And I was always on the operational side of that, running the business, because as you mentioned before, I come from a financial. Then in the late 90s, I fell into a window coverings business. I've sewn since I was a little girl, and you start sewing and people say, oh, can you make this for me? Can you make this for me? And before you know it, I woke up one day and had a window coverings business. And then I just went from there. I knew the financials. I was smart. I've had sales training. I had all these things. Yet there was something that just fell off in my business. My husband and I also, because he was in a corporate career, we were relocated a couple of times. And the last time was in 2014 when I ended up in Scottsdale, Arizona. Thought, like always, hey, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to start. But something in me was saying, this isn't right. And I started focusing in on saying, where is it that things are off for me? And I started understanding, and a couple of things happened in my personal life that really woke me up and saying, Elsa, this is up to you. And everything, you are smart. You can do all these things, but you're not thinking about it right. You are just not thinking about it right. It was a really wake-up lesson to me, or wake-up call, because I had my whole life thought that I could handle myself. Not only had I moved on my own when I was 17, taking care of myself, but I had moved 6,000 miles away from family and was thriving. But I wasn't really thriving. I was just surviving.
Yeah. It really resonates with me because I was in a very similar situation, still in the same business, digital marketing, but it was 20 years. For me, it was 20 years of kind of just wandering around and wondering, what am I missing? What were some of the personal challenges that you faced, that kind of helped you understand your approach to mindset?
Well, I think the first one that I faced, and I think many in the design, not only in window coverings, but in design industry, graphics design, architectural design, any kind of design, is the big comparison trap. Oh my God, they do so much better than me. They can do all these things. I could never do this. I would never be as good as the person across from me. That was the first one. That was like the biggest one for me. There was a huge imposter syndrome in me. And that, imposter syndrome is not always bad. Let me not put it that way. It's always good to have healthy competition. But first and foremost, the competition has to be against yourself, saying, how can I do better than I did yesterday? Not always look at somebody else's outside versus your inside.
Right. Yeah. I like that. Very good. Yeah. So why do you think that mindset is so crucial to business success?
Well, first of all, because we're all different. We all need things presented to us in a little different way. We all have to have our organizational just a little bit different for us, so it's optimal for us. And the only way we can do that is when we think it through and saying, does this work for me? You know, you can learn accounting. There's 10 million ways that you can do accounting, but in the end, it's all about profit and loss and your balance statement, right? But there's so much to be done in between that. The same thing with graphics design and marketing, like you are in, right? There's so many ways to approach that. But if you don't think about it and saying, is this really only working for somebody else, or will this work for me and the way that I am as a person? You know, you really have to trust yourself. And that's where the self-sabotage come in, because 99% of the time it's because we do not trust ourselves to make the right decision.
Definitely. Yeah. And then there's that little voice in the back of your head.
Yeah, the good little one and the bad little one, they're sitting there making a competition.
So you mentioned the kind of like that you were struggling with some different things, especially around imposter syndrome. What are some of the common barriers that people struggle with?
There's a couple of them. First of all, it's hiring too slow,
Okay.
because I'm afraid to show, either I'm afraid that somebody else is coming in to prove they're better than me. You know, it sounds really strange, but in reality, that can be. That was actually a thing for myself. When we talked at an earlier time, I think I mentioned to you, me sitting in my basement at 2 o'clock in the morning crying, having to make long panels and wasn't willing to actually hire that out.
Right.
Had I hired that out, it would have cost less, it would be done better, and I would have had my mental sanity. And the client
Sure.
would have had their end product faster. You know,
Right.
that's important too, right? So there was a whole bunch of things that I wasn't really thinking through. So that's one. The other thing is not understanding that it's your business. You have to make the decisions. We all say the customer is always right. Yes, but they're only right if you have laid out the terms and conditions for how you do business so you can measure it against it. Because otherwise you have no rules. You have bumpers for which within you can run your business.
I like that. I ran my business pretty passively, I think, during that time. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, well, if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen, and not maybe taking the action, being the aggressive person, and part of that probably speaks to the self-sabotage as well, which we'll talk about here in a second. But boy, that really resonates with me too.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people that get into business like I did, right? I woke up and, oh my God, I have a business.
Right.
And then you're already so deep into it. It's like, well, how can I stop? How can I actually start thinking about this in a way that is really going to serve myself and serve my clients at a higher level?
Right.
Because that's
Yeah.
the only way you can grow, right? When you can every day say, I am serving my clients just a little bit better. I am raising my level of standards for myself and for my clients.
Yep. Yeah. I like that. I've heard of the phrase building the airplane while you're in the air. That's the typical business owner. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And how many design firms, especially in the construction side, they say, oh, they call their design build. What does that mean? It means that you're just like starting to slam up some walls and then go from there, you know? I think part of it is we are so afraid of committing because we've all been raised to, you're not a quitter. You're not a quitter. You're not a quitter, right? I don't think I've ever not heard it, an entrepreneur say that. I don't
Yeah.
quit. I don't quit. The problem with that is it can pull you away from decision making. Because if you have to make a decision, then you have to think about, if this doesn't work out, I have to quit.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that came out of me learning about mindset was exactly what you said, permission to succeed. I
Yeah.
finally gave myself permission that it's okay to make more than whatever number I was cutting myself off at. That was huge for me. And we've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned self-sabotage a couple times today. Tell me what that concept kind of means and how it manifests in a business.
So in its rawest form, right? It is basically you putting up barriers in order to get what you want. That is as simple as you can, explain it. It is like wanting to cook a dish, but failing to go to the grocery store. right? You can't do it, right? So there's a component missing, and
Yeah.
you're not willing to look at that component.
Yeah.
So that is in its rawest form a self-sabotage. You know what's good for you, you're just not doing it.
Yeah. For me, it was a physical revenue number,
Mm-hmm.
$10,000. If I got to the point where I was making 10 grand a month and some new client came along, I did whatever I could to either not get that client or lose another one to keep me at keep me at that level. If I got to 12, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But it is those barriers that are just crazy and there's no reason for them, right?
What you're just describing is so, so, so common, because in our mind, we are starting to judge ourselves. How am I going to handle that extra work? What if that customer, I can't do this. And that's why I mentioned before, like the hiring, right?
Yeah.
Start with a contract worker that can maybe help you out a couple of hours a week instead of going full blown. But instead of saying, I can't do that, stop and saying, what am I really telling myself here?
I love that tip of hiring somebody just for like maybe just one project, see how they
Yeah.
do and hire somebody else to do the next one, compare, that kind of stuff is great.
For
So
me,
what are
as I
some,
mentioned
oh,
before, sitting in the basement, right? There are a lot of people out there, all they do is make long panels all day long, and that's what they love to do. So for me, it would have been so easy to just say, hey, here it is. Put your repeat here so I can match it with the top treatment if there was top treatments, right? But I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking, this is a high-end customer. How can I hire it out? And
right.
that was my self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I only
It's
have 24 hours in a day like you do. So if I had taken on another client like you with your $10,000, right? For me, I would say I could never make 20 panels in 2 weeks plus everything else.
yeah. And the hiring thing might like come across your mind, but you immediately dismiss it, right?
Mhm.
As not a viable option. I can definitely resonate with that as well. So, all right. So we talked a little bit about what these things are that are kind of messing us up. Talk to me a little bit about some steps somebody could take to maybe kind of start reversing that and growing their business.
Yeah. All mindset work starts with self-awareness. Start with recognizing where is it that I always get myself in trouble. Like you started recognizing it is a revenue number. I get in trouble when I get, and that's step one, just recognizing when is this happening? What is it really that I am doing? And then start telling yourself, listening to yourself and say, what stories am I telling myself about this thing? You shared about, oh, I can't do this. Maybe worthiness is some big for a lot of people. That's not me. I can't make that kind of money. I'm not that rich person, right? And all those stories we tell ourselves, they come from somewhere. We've been programmed since childhood to listen to those. Money doesn't grow on trees, a penny saved is a penny earned, and all these kind of things that we've been told our whole life. They sit in there and inform us saying, you can't do this, you shouldn't be doing this, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
But once we start opening ourselves up to saying, me in my basement, why do I tell myself that I have to sew those panels? What is it about me that's so special that should make those panels? And then I realized, for me in that particular incident, when I got over that one, because, let's face it, we all have a million ways we do this. It's not just one and you're fixed, it's fixed. But with the panel supply, I started telling myself my number one goal, and that's the next step. What is your number one goal that you want to achieve? You have to have that clarity, because once you know exactly what you want to achieve and you say to yourself, I'm never getting there because I'm telling myself this story. Now we can get somewhere, because we can start looking at saying, what other story do you need to start writing? And what was it that actually made you tell yourself this story on a continuous basis?
Yeah.
What is it? What fear is behind it? Is it imposter? Is it worthiness? Is it trust? Is it confidence? What is it that really is inside of you that is telling you that no, 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 just this is not for you?
I love that. Yeah, it's really good. What are some things we can do? Maybe you can't just like all of a sudden change, right? You can't just all of a sudden change direction, but there are probably some things you could do daily that would help you move
Oh,
in that direction?
tons of things you can do daily. Actually, the best advice is that I have ever gotten and that I also use myself is start your day off with saying, or you can do it the night before, depending on your person, your routines, and saying, what are three major things I want to accomplish today? Just three. Because let's face it, we can only have one first priority. A lot of people say, I have priorities. A priority is in of itself just one. But three major things that you want to get done today, or three things you want to get done today. And then at the end of the day, saying, did I get them done? And if you didn't get them done, don't beat yourself up over it. Make a record of it, just saying, also, why didn't you do those three things today? My son fell off the bike and broke his arm. Good reason, right? Or, oh no, I was scared. Be honest with yourself. I was scared that I couldn't get this done. The more honest you are with yourself in this work, the faster you get to a new result. But just start off by keeping a record.
Yeah. You brought up another thing that I fell prey to, which was action by inaction. By just not doing something, I was still making a decision.
Yeah. A decision not taking is still a decision.
It is.
Or decision not made, right?
Yeah.
You are handing over that decision and the result to somebody else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that brings up something that's really important to understand about mindset work. It is all mindset work is, sorry, my quiet time went off on my computer.
Oh,
No, good. Anyway, everything with mindset is in your head. So see, like right now, I got distracted, right? I got distracted from something outside my control. And that's what happened. When we let those things outside our control interfere with our thought process, that is the biggest way we can self-sabotage. Not allowing ourselves the space to think things. We get distracted by social media. We get distracted by family. We do need to allow ourselves some focused time where we say, I just need to think for a minute.
I like that. You said that was your quiet time alarm. How much time is that typically?
For me, it's typically like 45 minutes. I set out 45 minutes. Depending on the week. Sometimes you look at the week and saying, this week I can only allow myself 30 minutes per day that I think about what is really necessary. And some weeks you can allow yourself more time. And depending on what projects you have going, I don't believe in one size fits all for these hacks. You take them as guidelines. Some people say get up at 5 a.m, do your stretching, do your yoga, do your journaling, do your meditation, but for some people that doesn't work. They need to get up and they need to put themselves, they need to get the engine going right away. And they may need quiet time later. But if you just get up, start your day moving around without any kind of direction, then you go to bed without any kind of direction. It is like putting yourself in the car and tell it, take me. And the GPS doesn't work that way. We know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And your advice about, writing down the three things, I think that definitely includes some sort of practice, right? You got to get used to doing that. For me, my daughter works with me and we talk every Monday on what are we going to do to win the day and what are we going to do to win the week, right? Understanding that we're not going to win the day every day for 5 days. But if we can win 3 out of 5, we consider that we won the week, right? So some sort of practice around, like you said, just being cognizant of these are the goals, these are the rocks that I need to work on today, and just start doing. If you do all 5, that's fantastic, but most people can't, honestly, all 5.
No, right? And you mentioned it just sort of on the side to say, how do you actually start this, right? Because if you've been our behaviors are habitual. If you've never really done this, how do you actually start it? There's a really good book, there's Atomic Habits and there's Tiny Habits. I like Tiny Habits better than Atomic Habits. It's 2 habit-forming books. Tiny Habits talks about just make one step. Just have the first little baby step. So, like if you want to get up in the morning, the night before, put out your pencil and the book so you have it right there when you wake up or on your kitchen table. So when you sit down and have your morning coffee, the pencil and the table is already there. Put it in mind size so you actually get reminded of it. And that's the biggest thing about building a new habit, the reminder, right? To help yourself do better.
Yeah. I like that. I sent the book Atomic Habits to all of my mastermind members because I think it's
Yes.
fantastic. I haven't heard of what is it? Tiny Habits?
Tiny habits, yeah. That I as I said, I actually personally like that book better. And again, it's
Okay.
just because the way he talks about the habits, the ideas are more or less the same. It's just the way that he has put them into, into to his practice. And as I said again
Yeah.
before, we have to look at a lot of different things and allow ourselves to make the decision that works for us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I'll check that book out for sure. I'll link it in the show notes below too, in case anybody wants to grab it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's great to have a couple different things because sometimes different books resonate with us different ways, even though they're about the same topic.
Yes. And let's face it, what I do, what a lot of other coaches do in my space, we all come from the same philosophy, right? It started out with Socrates and Plato and all these great ancient philosophers, but with all of our individual experiences, we all of a sudden see new connections, new ways of opening up, new ways of seeing it. One of the things that I know people always talk to me about is this, well, how do you know about this? How do you know about that? And it's simply because I've had the luxury not only to be working in a lot of different industries, but I've also worked in different cultures and just understanding what does it take for an immigrant with an immigrant family history to create a business in the US.
Nice.
Where traditions, family, history, everything is different, right? So that's what I bring in. I bring in a very broad knowledge of the world into a small scale. So you don't have to think about all these things because even if it's not for me, it might be the client one of my clients that have a very difficult client themselves because that client comes from another culture and another ritual. And they say, well, I don't understand why they keep doing this. And just to understand and meet the client saying, oh, now I understand. Now I understand why you can't make this decision. You have to go through X, Y, and Z.
Sure. Yeah. So tell me about one of your clients that maybe struggled with this a little bit and kind of, how did they get through it? What were the steps? What did they do?
Well, I had a client who was negotiating contracts, a talented designer who was negotiating contract with a manufacturer to have her own design line within this. And the way she was self-sabotaging was a little bit like you. Who am I to be in this room? I cannot ask for X amount of money in this contract. I cannot ask for X amount of money up front. It is for her, it was really about that understanding that saying they're looking to you for the expertise. They don't have it. You are sitting with the expertise. Don't let them tell you what your value is on that expertise. They're coming to you because you have what they want. And so I successfully worked with her in order for her to get to the point where she felt she could negotiate these contracts because this wasn't just a one-off. This was at the beginning of something very big for her. And so she landed the contract and she has landed several more since then. So I'm very, very happy for her.
Yeah. That's interesting. Once you kind of start making that change and taking that action, it helps. It happens over and over again. Right. And of course, then you're like, oh, that was easy. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Or in my case, 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's like anything is easy when you know how to do it.
Yeah. Right. Very true. Yeah. So you mentioned things around stress management. I know that you have a download available. Tell me more about that.
Well, the thing about, we talked about self-sabotage, right? And 99% of my clients don't know that that's what they're doing. They don't realize that that's because I'm sure you yourself too, felt like you were working really hard and you were doing your best. You were doing everything that you knew how to do best, right?
Sure.
You couldn't see that it was actually yourself standing in your own. But what does happen is we see the effects of it. Just like we go to the doctor, we don't know why we have a stomach pain. We have to have the doctor to help us figure out what it is, right? And some of the symptoms or strongest symptoms of self-sabotage is stress and burnout, maybe poor health, overeating, not exercising. And the last category is for me, which is very sad, is relationship, personal relationships, which can be absolutely crushed by our self-sabotage. But stress is an easy one for us to identify. When we can't go to sleep at night, when we just feel like we are just running on empty and there's just no more time in the day. And there's a couple of different ways that we can actually help ourselves sort of become that valve to take away the stress, the buildup of that big stress factor. And my 5 easy stress busters, which will be in the show note as a download, is just an easy way for people to say, again, there's not one that fits all. So that's why there's 5 different ways that you can do it. But the one that universally my clients have always loved is just take a breath. Because when you're stressed, you are out here. You are everywhere but in your own body. And just by open or closed eyes, doesn't really matter. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose, hold it at the top and just let it out. It is the best and simplest way that we can all try to, at least eliminate a little bit of that edge of the stress.
Yeah, and
It
back
takes
to
such
tiny
little
habits.
time.
One
Exactly.
little thing. It's not like you have to do all 5 of these immediately today, right?
No, I literally have clients that I've asked them to put a timer on their phone every hour to take a breath, to take
Yeah.
a conscious. And the reason is that we talked about time before, that we only have 24 hours in the day, right? But I bet you, like myself and many of my clients, have come to the end of many days and say, what the heck did I do today? I've been busy all day. I don't know what I've been doing. And that's because we have gone through the day outside ourselves. We have been focused on everything out here without actually taking it in and absorbing what we do. But if we can just stop, take that breath and saying, what am I really doing right now? Then we remember what we've been doing. And that starts helping us not only see, oh, no wonder I'm exhausted today.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah, I love that. So we'll link to the 5 stress busters, and that's a free download. I love that
Yes.
you're offering that.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
Another thing that you and I had talked about is you're putting together like a little mini course on self-sabotage. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, as we talked about before, it all starts with awareness, right? And that's really what the mini course is about. Opening up that channel for that awareness, really helping you start saying that, well, how do I actually even do that? Because as I also mentioned before, we don't see it ourselves. We often don't see it. But because I've talked to so many, thousands of people, and just study shows that there are patterns that you can start seeing for yourself. There's ways that you can start observing yourself a little bit and saying, oh, this is what I do every time. Like, as you mentioned before, again, because you're here and you have already shared it, is like that $10,000 mark. Ooh. And then just start, through my positive intelligence certification as a coach, right? One of the things we talk about is becoming an anthropologist on your own life. Start studying your life. What is it that I'm actually doing that's not getting the results that I want? And what are the stories that I'm telling myself? And we all have a certain amount of stories that we constantly have on repeat in our head that was planted there so long ago that we don't even remember when, or we don't even remember how 95% of the time, because even though we can say, oh, this happened to me and this happened to me, it's typically deeper than that. We only remember the certain times in our lives where that came up. But again, so the mini course is about helping you to start raise that awareness, so you actually know now, what am I dealing with? How much work is really involved here. Sometimes it's minor tweaks. Sometimes it takes a little more deep. I think you and I, in a previous conversation, talked about, and I think this is really important to note, is like, I used to never believe in this. I used to tell myself, I know how to take care of myself. I used to say, counseling, coaches, all that stuff. I've been on my own since I was 17. I don't need this help. I know how to take care of myself. But that was a big fat lie for me. We are just too close to it. And the thing about it is, we deserve so much better. You deserve much better. The listeners deserve so much better. Their families, their communities. Because once we do this work, we are able to generate so much more energy for ourselves, for the people that we love. And that's why I do it. And I never answered your question early on in our conversation this is why I love, 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 love working with business owners, because I know the pain they're going through. I know all the stories they're hiding inside themselves, all the insecurities. And because they do that, they're not giving the gift of their full presence in their lives, of their families, their communities, and they're never able to actually give back in the big way that they want to.
That's awesome. Yeah. So thank you for offering the mini course as well. I think it's going to be huge. I wish I would have had it, and the other thing I wish I would have had was a business coach. You mentioned that, I thought I could do it, and hiring a business coach and someone to be accountable to, someone to give you some focus and direction, it's totally changed everything for me.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting, right? When we look at our lives, from the day we're born, we have coaches and mentors. They teach us how to tie our shoes. They teach us how to go to the bathroom. They teach us how to play soccer, football, baseball. They teach us to read and write and do all these things, right? Now, all of a sudden, we're in business for ourselves. And we say, no, I can do it all by myself. What makes us do that? We have never done it. It is like winging it is not really a good business strategy.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
My opinion is it starts with how you think about running your business, because many of the other things are skill sets that you can learn or hire out.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you again for offering these things. We'll definitely link to these in the show notes. What other resources? I know you mentioned Tiny Habits, Atomic Habits. What other resources, tools, things can we point the listeners in a direction to kind of check out?
So I could talk about books all day long. There are some of the very fundamentals that people talk about. Think and Grow Rich, right, by Earl Nightingale. It has a very specific message. There's a shorter version that also gives sort of that message. It's called Acres of Diamonds. John Maxwell's book on leadership is amazing. The 5 levels of leadership, just understanding how you have to grow as a leader. And those are really great books. There are some great resources. I'm trying to think what his name is right now. It escapes me and I should have remembered it, but there is on Facebook, if you Google train tracks and cities, there is a pastor from Florida who has a 7-part series where he is presenting about how do you actually think about building a business. He's a pastor, but has a very good way of thinking about it, because part of him is also saying you need to take time out to think about where is your business going, because you have so many roles as a business. There are, like you mentioned before, tons of resources on YouTube, on Google, networking. One of the most important things that we have to remember is we got to get in the rooms where the people are that are smarter than us. It is not for us to get into the imposter side of it, but it's for us to ask questions. It is for us to say, well, how did he really do that? And again, listen and learn, and then decide what works for me, and make sure that the people that we ask have actually done what they're saying they're going to do the way they did it. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, out there in the industry have never run a business. They've never actually put it into practice themselves. They've learned it and they say, this is how it works. This is how the formula goes. I think it's really important, especially for a small business owner, that it's somebody who's been in their shoes.
So you've been in the window covering business for a while.
I had my business for about 2 decades. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So along the way, what was one of the biggest lessons that you learned that you wish more business owners knew?
First of all, that the window coverings industry is a pretty amazing industry. I don't think I've had any other industry I've been involved in where people were so ready to give you advice, so ready to share, and just go on. You and I have been are in a couple of Facebook groups, right? The outpour of support and teaching, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing and wonderful to see this camaraderie, knowing that that at the end of the day, we have to provide for our own business and for our own family, but that doesn't preclude us from lifting somebody else up. Because the better I do, the better you do, the better standards that we have in the industry, the more we rise it up.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for that. Future plans. And now that you've kind of moved into the coaching piece of your life story, What are some projects that you're working on?
Some of the projects that I'm working on is to expand my group program. And also I'm really excited because I just launched a very new, it's called a thinking partnership, a partnership. And that's
Okay.
more for the CEOs in those early stages of scaling, or when they're sitting in that vacuum of saying, what are I really doing? Came to the point and said, I can't really figure out why I am not going higher, to help them really dig down and deeply see where is the clarity, where's the piece that I'm missing. Because I feel so many of us, it is in that space on saying, I am so tired of banging my head against the wall. And because of the way that I coach, I know I am really good at helping them sort it through, extract all the pieces and pull away what's not needed and put it back together again to something that looked very cohesive and very usable from that mindset, from that clarity perspective, that they then can go and say to the business coach, what do I do now? How do we make this happen? It's like going on vacation and know that every piece of clothing you have in your suitcase is the right piece of clothing for that vacation.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. So that's exciting. I love that you're building some new things and being able to help more people. So we'll link to the Stress Busters download.
Mm-hmm.
We'll link to the mini course. We'll link to the new one that you just launched. All of this will be in the show notes. If someone wants to get a hold of you, what are the best ways for them to do that?
The very best way to get hold of me is send me an email. Simply send me an email, elsa@morethanjustfine.com.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really do appreciate it. I definitely appreciate you and your time. And I think we've covered some fantastic topics today. So if you want to, as a listener, subscribe to the Marketing Pains podcast. We'd love to have you on as a subscriber. We'd love to have, more episodes like this that can really help you grow your business and just expand beyond where you're at now and quit that self-sabotage. We would love to be able to do that for you. So thank you again for listening. Hope you all have a fantastic day. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you in the next episode.